Chapter 3, The Spouter Inn, Part 2. I now took the measure of the bench and found that it was a foot too short, but that could be mended with a chair, but it was a foot too narrow, and the other bench in the room was about 4 inches higher than the planed one, so there was no yoking them. I then placed the first bench flankswise along the only clear space against the wall, leaving a little interval between for my back to settle down in. But I soon found that there came such a draught of cold air over me that under the sill of the window that this plan would never do at all, especially as another current from the rickety door met the one from the window, and both together formed a series of small whirlwinds in the immediate vicinity of the spot where I had thought to spend the night. The devil fetch that harpooner, thought I, but stop. Couldn't I steal a march on him, bolt his door inside, and jump into his bed, not to be wakened by the most violent knockings? It seemed no bad idea, but upon second thoughts I dismissed it, for who could tell what the next morning, so soon as I popped out of the room, the harpooner might be standing in the entry all ready to knock me down. Still, looking round me again and seeing no possible chance of spending a sufferable night unless in some other person's bed, I began to think that after all, I might be cherishing unwarrantable prejudice against this unknown harpooner. Thinks I'll wait a while. He must be dropping in before long. I'll have a good look at him then, and then perhaps we may become jolly good bedfellows after all. There's no telling. But though the other boarders kept coming in by ones, twos, and threes and going to bed, yet no sign of my harpooner. "Landlord," said I, "what sort of chap is he? Does he always keep such late hours?" It was now hard upon 12 o'clock. The landlord chuckled again with his lean chuckle, and seemed to be mighty tickled at something beyond my comprehension. "No," he answered, "generally he's an early bird. Early to bed and early to rise, yes, but he's the bird what catches the worm. But tonight he went out a-peddling, you see, and I don't see what on earth keeps him so late, unless maybe he can't sell his head." "Can't sell his head? What sort of a bamboozling story is this you are telling me?" Getting into a towering rage. "Do you pretend to say, landlord, that this harpooner is actually engaged this blessed Saturday night, or rather Sunday morning, in peddling his head around this town?" "That's precisely it," said the landlord, "and I told him that he couldn't sell it here. The market's overstocked." "With what?" shouted I. "With heads, to be sure. Ain't there too many heads in the world?" "I tell you what it is, landlord," said I quite calmly. "You'd better stop spinning that yarn to me. I'm not green." "Maybe not," taking out a stick and whittling the toothpick, "but I rather guess you'll be done brown if that ere harpooner hears you a-slandering his head." "I'll break it for him," said I, now flying to a passion again at this unaccountable farrago of the landlord's. "It's broke already," said he. "Broke?" said I. "Broke, do you mean?" "Certain, and that's the very reason he can't sell it, I guess." "Landlord," said I, going up to him as cool as Mount Helka in a snowstorm. "Landlord, stop whittling. You and I must understand one another, and that too without delay. I come to your house and want a bed. You tell me you can only give me half of one, that the other half belongs to a certain harpooner. And about this harpooner, whom I have not yet seen, you persist in telling me the most mystifying and exasperating stories, tending to beget in me an uncomfortable feeling towards the man whom you design for my bedfellow, a sort of connection, landlord, which is an intimate and confidential one in the highest degree. I now demand of you to speak out and tell me who and what this harpooner is, and whether I shall be in all respects safe to spend the night with him. And in the first place, you will be so good as to unsay that story about selling his head, which true I take to be good evidence that this harpooner is stark mad, and I have no idea of sleeping with a madman. And you, sir, landlord, you, sir, by trying to induce me to do so knowingly, would thereby render yourself liable to a criminal prosecution." "Well," said the landlord, fetching a long breath, "that's a pretty long sermon for a chap that rips a little now and then. But be easy, that this here harpooner I've been telling you has just arrived from the South Seas, where he bought up a lot of balmed New Zealand heads. Great curios, you know, and he sold them all but one, and that he's trying to sell tonight because tomorrow's Sunday, and it would not do so to be selling human heads about the streets when folks is going to churches. He wanted to last Sunday, but I stopped him just as he was going out the door with 4 heads strung on a string for all the earth like a string of Indians. This account cleared up the otherwise unaccountable mystery and showed that the landlord, after all, had no idea of fooling me. But at the same time, what could I think of a harpooner who stayed out on a Saturday night clean into the Holy Sabbath, engaged in such a cannibal business as selling the heads of dead idolaters? Depend on it, landlord, that harpooner is a dangerous man. He pays regular, was the rejoinder, but come, it's getting dreadful late. You better go turn in flukes. It's a nice bed. Sal and me slept in that bed the night when we were spliced. There's plenty of room for 2 to keep out in that bed. It's an almighty bed, that. Why, before we give it up, Sal used to put our Sam and little Johnny in the foot of it. But I got a dreaming and sprawling around one night, and somehow Sam got pitched on the floor and came near breaking his arm. After that, Sal said it wouldn't do. Come along here, I'll give you a glim in a jiffy. So saying, he lighted a candle and held it towards me, offering to lead the way. But I stood irresolute. When looking at a clock in the corner, he exclaimed, "Oh, it's Sunday. You won't see that harpooner tonight. He's come to anchor somewhere. Come along then, do come. Won't you come?" I considered the matter a moment, and then up the stairs we went, and I was ushered into a small room, cold as a clam, and furnished, sure enough, with a prodigious bed, almost big enough indeed for any 4 harpooners to sleep abreast. "There," said the landlord, placing the candle on a crazy old sea chest that did double duty as a washstand and center table. "There, make yourself comfortable now, and good night to ye." I turned around from eyeing the bed, but he had disappeared. Folding back the counterpane, I stopped over the bed. Though none of the most elegant, it stood the scrutiny tolerably well. I then glanced around the room, and besides the bedstead and center table, could see no other furniture belonging to the place, but a brood shelf, the 4 walls, and a papered fireboard representing a man striking a whale. Of things not probably belonging to the room, there was a hammock lashed up and thrown upon the floor in one corner. Also a large seaman's bag containing the harpooner's wardrobe, no doubt, in lieu of a land trunk. Likewise, there was a parcel of outlandish boned fish hooks on the shelf over the fireplace, and a tall harpoon standing at the head of the bed. But what is this on the chest? I took it up and held it close to the light and felt it and smelt it and tried every way possible to arrive at some satisfactory conclusion concerning it. I can compare it to nothing but a large doormat, ornamented at the edges with little tinkling tags, something like the stained porcupine quills around an Indian moccasin. There was a hole or slit in the middle of this mat, as you can see the same in South American ponchos. But could it be possible that any sober harpooner would get into a doormat and parade the streets of any Christian town in that sort of guise? I put it on to try it, and it weighed me down like a hamper, being uncommonly shaggy and thick, and I thought a little damp, as though this mysterious harpooner had been wearing it on a rainy day. I went up to it in a bit of glass stuck against the wall, and never saw such a sight in my life. I tore myself out of it in such a hurry that I gave myself a kink in the neck. I sat down at the side of the bed and commenced thinking about this head-peddling harpooner and his doormat. After thinking some time on the bedside, I got up and took off my monkey jacket, then stood in the middle of the room thinking. I then took off my coat and thought a little more in my shirt sleeves. But beginning to feel very cold now, half undressed as I was, and remembering what the landlord said about the harpooners not coming home at all that night, it being so very late, I made no more ado, but jumped out of my pantaloons and boots, and then blowing out the light, tumbled into bed and commenced myself to the care of heaven. End of part 2, the Spouter Inn.